Special filtering bunny masks are the latest weapons devised to combat smog, which last winter killed 4,000 Londoners in a single week. Dogs as well can be protected against the deadly fumes which throw a heavy pall across Britain's big cities every year. Ordinary fog does little harm, but smog has become one of the greatest mass murderers of modern times.
They started giving us a tuppenny halfpenny bit of bleaking cotton to put round your nostrils and round your mouth. And when we challenged them, we took them to the North Middlesex industrial section, the hospital, and they said they're useless. They're useless.
Harold Macmillan ignored the expert advice and pushed for masks he knew to have no effect. The National Health Service was ordered to divert funds towards the distribution of 3 million masks. London's next big fog revealed the results. By the time London suffered the last of its great fogs in 1961, government measures had failed to save 100,000 lives. The fog of 1952 had killed 10 of Dr. David Bates's patients. But how had they died?
When one of our patients died, we tried very hard to get an autopsy. I don't remember attending one. And then about a week later, we heard about the cattle.
Despite all attempts to save them with whiskey-soaked masks, at the Smithfield show, 13 animals have died of what the stockman called fog fever.
I well remember going to the Royal Veterinary College and examining the lung sections to see what had killed these animals, and it was a very acute inflammation in the small airways of the lung.
In its windpipe, it was all green, sort of horrible sludgy stuff all round about, and you maybe could get just a modern little one of these big pens through the centre, and that was all the air that was left for them to breathe.
And we guessed that this was what had killed our patients too, was the same thing. And not a bacterial thing, and not anything that an antibiotic would have made any difference to, but an inflammation in response to the fog that they've been breathing.
In America, research into the 1952 disaster has come to a surprising conclusion. London is not a foggy town at all.
Well, I usually ask the students in my class if they remember these Sherlock Holmes movies or movies about Jack the Ripper, where there's this swirling fog going through these alleyways in the East End. And they all remember that there was a killer lurking in that fog swirling around in the street. That swirling stuff in all those nice period movies wasn't fog. What they had in London was air pollution.
This air pollution begins with natural fog, which forms when water condenses into mist in the cold air. In London, these mists became mixed with the hot smoke from chimneys, mutating into dense man-made fogs. Like water poured on hot coals, cold, moist air billowed over the hot chimney stacks, creating more fog, which sank to the ground, trapping the city.
There were 3 great air pollution disasters in the 20th century, and all of them occurred when there was a low-level temperature inversion that locked all of the pollution into a valley where people lived and where there was a great deal of coal combustion generating air pollution that then got squeezed into a small place and the levels skyrocketed.
The 1952 disaster forced the authorities to recognize the culprit not as a trick of the weather, but as a man-made killer. The mix of smoke and fog, smog, was pursued with new laws.
I think after the London fog, the government of England introduced the Clean Air Act to get rid of the open burning of coal and to clean up the air in London. Unfortunately, at the same time, traffic has increased a great deal, and an awful lot of the traffic in London is diesel buses, diesel taxis, diesel cars.
At that time, we did a calculation of what the effect was of different kinds of pollution source. And one of them was houses, and then there were big chimneys and small chimneys and trains. And trains and road traffic were recognized as the next on the list. The houses were the worst, the traffic, which was obviously going to increase enormously.
You look at those buses going down the street, and the smoke that's coming out of the back is black. It's not green.
It was one day, not long ago, London had to say goodbye to her last tram. Sometime, someday, it had to come. And some people were glad to see the back of them. And some of us were sorry they were going.
The change from trams and trolley buses over to diesel buses in the 1950s was, from the public health and environment point of view, a disaster. And has had a huge impact on the health of Londoners.
In the name of Londoners and London transport, I say, goodbye, old tram.
The last electric tram was replaced by diesel buses on July the 5th, 1952. At the time of the disaster, 8,000 new buses were being driven into London's fog.
I never forgot it. Those people didn't die in vain, because it was part of the process of starting, getting rid of open coal burning, understanding how to heat a city without this problem. And so I think historically an important marker, and therefore I think, quite apart from remembering the people who died, it's very well worth reminding ourselves that it was the catastrophe that marked a turning point.
Despite their smokeless home in Lambeth, Mrs. Mitchie and her family are still threatened by smog, which can travel hundreds of miles. Flats like theirs are the first step towards its banishment. Though little Paul Mitchie sets Father Christmas a new problem. Through the door, please, he says, not the chimney. We haven't got one.
Okay. All right.
Having followed doctors' advice to leave the city and so escape the 1952 disaster, John Bilton and his wife Queenie now believed government action had made it safe to retire back home to London.
Now that the Clean Air Act had come, Queenie was only too keen to get back to London. She never really enjoyed being at Belmont. It was a good environment to bring the kids up in. But basically, she was a Londoner and wanted to get back to London. There was a very bad period of about 3 weeks towards November, December 91.
Well, in 1991, during a period of extremely calm weather, practically all of the pollution monitors went off the scale for the things that they were measuring. Very similar to the conditions that occurred during the smog of 1952.
And that's when she became ill, and she was ill for about a month, slowly getting worse and worse. And that was it. She floated off like a bird. Woof.
180 Londoners died in the smog of 1991. Air pollution now kills up to 24,000 people in Britain every year.
Demystify the killer fog further with facts from our Secret History website. Visit channel4.com/next step. Come next Thursday night, Forward to the Ends of the Earth will be here. Details on the way. Now, coming up, Channel 4 is raising a few eyebrows. The Runaway Cars is an investigation into car safety. You might feel secure, but is the car you drive hiding a safety flaw you should have been told about? Find out next.
Everywhere.